Hi, I'm Kim and welcome to my channel. Now, today we are going to talk about hand piecing. So if you are a beginner at hand piecing and you want to hand piece your quilt, you are in exactly the right place. I'm going to start though with answering a couple of questions. So first of all, what is hand piecing? So if you don't know and you're new to this, hand piecing is simply where we are joining our pieces of patchwork together. So we got our two pieces of fabric and we're joining them together by hand rather than machine. And if you were sewing it together by machine, it would be called machine piecing. Somebody thought long and hard about that, didn't they? So hand piecing is when we're joining all our patchwork together by hand. And people, I think, fall into one of two camps. So the people who like machine piecing fall into one camp, and then there are people who fall into hand piecing. But there's an area in the middle. So if you've got tricky seams, like Y seams, so the seams that are shape in a Y, they're really tricky to do on a machine, if not slightly impossible. Curves and so on. So when you've got the tricky seams, then hand piecing really comes into its own. A lot of English paper piecing that uses hand piecing. So hand piecing definitely has its place in patchwork, but maybe you don't get on with a machine and you much prefer to hand piece. So this one is exactly for you. I think there are pros and cons to both of them, but if you want to go down the hand piecing route, definitely go down that route. Also, if you're going on holiday, you can't take your machine with you all the time, so hand piecing may be the way to go for that one. So let's talk about that. So let's switch screens and I will show you exactly how to hand piece your blocks and your quilts together. Here we go. The first thing we're going to do is draw our 1/4 inch seam line on, because that will make your life so much easier. So get yourself one of your quilting rulers. So this is a little one, fits under the camera a lot easier. And you will notice around the edge there is a 1/4 inch marking, and it's pretty much the same on whatever make of ruler you've got. You will find your 1/4 inch line round two of the edges, if not all of them. This has got 1/2 inch on two of the edges and a 1/4 inch on two edges here. So have a look at your ruler first and determine where that 1/4 inch line is. And then you're going to establish which side of your fabric. So we're going to draw on the wrong side, but make sure that you're doing your 1/4 inch on the seam, on the edge that you want to be stitching. And I am going to line up that 1/4 inch line along the raw edge of my little piece here. And I'm going to draw myself a nice thin pencil line. It's just enough for you to see. Okay, can you see that under the camera? I'm going to make this darker for you to see, because this is no point if you can't see this line. There we go. We've got a really strong line there. But for you, I want you to do it lightly enough, just enough for you to see. But we're going to put that 1/4 inch on both of your pieces of fabric. So on the wrong side of both of them. Okay, so we've got our two pieces of fabric with our 1/4 inch line marked on there. So that is your job one. So if you are going to follow along with me on a little test piece, pause this video here, go and do that, and I'll meet you back in just 1 second. The next thing I'm going to do is pin those two pieces together, right sides together. So this will really help you. So let's just pretend this is my right side. I've got my right sides together with my drawn lines facing outwards. Can you see that? So the side with my pencil lines on is the wrong side of my fabric. And I'm going to stick a couple of pins in. As you get more confident doing this, you may not need the pins, but to start with, let's use pins to help us get going. There's nothing wrong in pins. That's why they were invented. Just a tip, by the way, when you are stitching, have your pins perpendicular to your raw edge. So the points go towards your raw edge. You'll find it a lot easier to sew, whether by hand or machine. Okay, so get your pieces pinned together first of all, so your pencil line will match up either side, but don't worry too much because we're going to do that in the next little section. So do that and I'll meet you back in a moment. Okay, before we get on to stitching, we need to talk needle and thread just very quickly, so bear with me, it is important. So first up, size needle that you need is a size 10 needle, and it needs to be a universal needle or sharps needle. So with hand sewing, your general all-purpose needles for everything are called sharps. Yeah, I know that all needles are sharp, I get that. I don't know why they're called sharps and nothing else is called sharps, but your standard everyday sewing needles are called sharps. Generally, you'll get them in packets with different sizes, and you tend to get them in sizes between 5 to 10, and that's okay. You'll get a few different sizes in there. So 5 are smaller and 10 are larger. That's all you need to know. They go up in sizes according to the number. And they're just a longer needle, which helps us when we are doing our stitching. They have a bigger eye as well, so that's going to help you with the threading. I'm going to give you a tip about threading in just a second. Your thread is your standard 50 weight cotton thread that we use for piecing, whether we're piecing by hand or piecing by machine. So I've got two here. The Gutermann on my left is a kind of light brown caramel coloured spool. So that's the correct colour for Gutermann. And if you're Mettler, then this lilac spool here. So those are probably the two most common. I know there are other threads around, but you want 50 weight cotton thread for piecing. So that is the same, as I said, whether you're sewing by hand or by machine. So let's put the Gutermann to one side. I'm going to stitch this with bright red so that you can see. The quickest way to thread your needle, and a tip as well, is to always thread your needle with the thread that comes off the spool. That doesn't matter what type of sewing you're doing. Thread as this end that comes off the spool. Don't be tempted to cut your thread and then pick up this edge and start threading your needle. The reason why is it becomes all tangled up, or there's more chance of it becoming tangled up. So if you thread it from the end that comes off the spool of the needle or the reel of the needle, you'll find it doesn't tangle up quite so much, and that's always a good thing. So what we are going to do is take our end of the needle here. I am going to put, or end of the thread, sorry. I'm going to put my reading glasses on. And we're going to snip the end of this off at a 45-degree angle. Okay, you may not be able to see that. Actually, you can sort of see that, can't you? You may not be able to see particularly, but don't worry, just snip it at a 45-degree angle. Get your needle, lick your finger, bear with me, lick your finger, and put your wet finger on the back of your needle. And then, I'm going to have to get closer so I can see. And then just poke your thread through the needle and it will go pretty much like magic. And that's because the wet on the needle, your saliva, sorry to be a bit basic, but you know, we're all grown-ups here. The saliva that you've put on the back of the eye of the needle helps to draw the thread through. I'm sure there's some fancy name for it, but all I know is that it works and it cuts down your time for threading the needle. Try it if you're stitching on your machine at all. You can do the same thing. So if you're struggling to thread your machine needle, do the same thing. Just put a bit of saliva behind the needle, eye of the needle on your machine, cut your thread at a 45-degree angle and poke it through, and you'll find that it goes through most of the time. So that's our thread then. I'm going to cut that off there. I don't need to put a knot in the end of the thread. So if you're going along with me, get your needle threaded up, and we'll meet back in a second and we'll start stitching this up. Okay, on to the actual stitching bit then. So we've got our pieces here. This fabric is shredding already. We've got our pieces here pinned together ready for sewing. We've got our needle and thread. We are going to put our needle through on our pencil line and make sure that it's coming out our pencil line on the other side. Can you see that just there? all right? And then we're going to poke that needle up about 1/8 of an inch along on the pencil line, making sure that it comes up on the pencil line on this side. Let's just even that up slightly. And then I'm going to bring my thread through, leaving a little tail at the end. It doesn't matter how much, just a little tail. Then we're going to go back on ourselves to lock that stitch in. So I'm going to put my needle back down that original hole just here where I made that first stitch. I put my needle through into there, and I'm going to, from behind, come along and come up about 1/8 of an inch further down. So this is where that stitch came up. Oh, this stitch came up originally. I've gone behind and I've come up next to it about 1/8 of an inch. Okay, I know that those two lengths look a bit different. That's because I've got a camera in the way. But your stitch there will be about 1/8 of an inch, and that gap there will be about 1/8 of an inch. Don't worry if it's not exact. It doesn't need to be an exact science. It's just that you need some small stitches. The smaller that your stitches are, the tighter they are. The looser that your stitches, or the bigger your stitches, the looser they will be, and your piecing will come apart. So you just need to aim for small stitches. That's what we're going for. So about 1/8 of an inch. So having done that first lock stitch there, so that's our first one. It's called a back stitch. I'm going to do the same again for this second stitch. So I'm going to go down. Okay. And then I'm going to go along a little bit, about 1/8 of an inch, coming up through those two pencil lines, making sure that you're matching on the back. And bring that thread through. My tail's got caught. Okay, so we've got 2 stitches nicely locked into place there. And then all we are going to do is do a little running stitch. And a little running stitch is just your simple in and out stitch, but this is where your long needle comes into its own. Because what I can do is I can go down that pencil line 1/8 of an inch. I can come up the other side, just like we were before, coming up the other side by about 1/8 of an inch, then go down and then come up again. And you can rock your needle along just up and down that pencil line all the way along, just 3 or 4 stitches, and you can do multiple stitches in one go. And make sure all the time that you're going through both pencil lines. So I'm going to draw that through. I've just done 2 there. I'll show you again. Okay. So can you see now we've got our little running stitch starting to show there. That's what we're after. Now what you would do, this is only a little 3-inch square, but what you would do if you've got a longer piece of fabric here, every 3 or 4, say every 4 of these little running stitches, do a little back lock stitch, just like we did at the beginning. So let's just pretend I've done 4 of those. I'm going to take this pin out so it's out of the way. Let's pretend we've done 4 of these, and I'm going to do a little lock stitch. So I'm just going to go back on myself like we did before, come up 1/8 of an inch along. Okay, can you see that? Just like we did at the beginning, and pull it through, and that will lock it in place. And then we'll do another 3 or 4 running stitches. So I'm putting my needle in, I'm popping up, I'm putting my needle in, I'm popping up. So we rock our needle in and out all the way along. All right, can you see that? And if you're, as I said, if your piece was long enough, you could do like 4 or 5 or 6 stitches all in one go, and that's where this longer needle comes into its own. So let's take that pin out. And as we're coming up to the end here, I can put my needle in. Let's just bring it out to the back. Okay, so I've got my stitch there, and I'm going to redo that stitch so I can lock it in place. So all I'm going to do is bring my needle up on the same place from behind. Okay, can you see that? Just through there. So if you look at the back, you can see that I've come back on the gap that, oops, the gap that I am creating here. And I'm coming up onto the beginning of that stitch line and go down again. So I can lock that in place. All right, and that is your hand piecing by hand. So let's undo this. I'm going to snip my thread, take that pin out, and I can open it up. And your same rules apply, that your seam always goes over to your dark side. And you can see at the beginning here, this is a good example. So along here were all my small stitches, but can you see at the beginning, you know, I said that one of my stitches, my first stitch, was a bit longer because I was trying to battle with the camera in the way, so I couldn't quite see what I was doing. So I had a slightly longer stitch and then my short stitch. Can you see here where that longer stitch are, that's quite loose? Okay, so that's loose, and then all these others are fine where the small stitches are, and I'm not pulling that very much. So we really want to aim for small stitches. So it's a really good example to aim for really small stitches. Okay, and that, my dear lovely friend, is exactly how you do your hand piecing. So I hope that helps. Have fun hand piecing your quilts, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.